The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Casten, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Nice to see you, Chair Powell. I want to just start by thanking you for your service over these last couple of years. I know you and I have talked before that your rhetoric, your language, making it clear to all of us and to the nation that we needed a balanced fiscal and monetary policy in response to the downturn created the political space for us to do what we did. I don't think we could have done that without your voice. And the fact that we had not only as rapid a recovery, but as equitable a recovery as we did was because we had that space. And I think history will show that we owe you more gratitude than we've given you. And I thank you for that. The fact that wages grew fastest for the bottom quintile did not happen but for that fiscal policy that complemented what you were doing. And yet we find ourselves today with people talking about fear of a recession. And I would submit to you that the fear of a recession is not because our economy is weak, but because our democracy is weak. If we were to use our tool on this side of the dais to say, what should we do to address labor markets? We'd reform our immigration system. What should we do to reduce people's exposure to high-priced volatile fossil fuels? We'd make massive investments in cleaner, cheaper energy. What should we do in response to housing supply constraints? We'd invest in housing. I could go on and on. Everything on that list is deeply, deeply partisan because the markets are looking at the United States and saying, do people in this line of work, those 537 of us who have the privilege to hold federally elected office, do we see human pain and suffering as a problem to be solved or as a frailty to be exploited for our political ends? They look at my colleagues who 2 years ago thought it was harder to stand up to Vladimir Putin and support Ukraine and say they're going to do the same thing again. They look at the talking points that all of you get every Monday that says, talk about Biden's energy crisis, his border crisis, don't do a damn thing. I admire your obedience. Do you have an ounce of leadership in your bodies? And so now we're left here in this moment, and I'm not going to ask you to opine on policies. I understand you can't do that. But you were so eloquent 2 years ago in saying, if we don't balance fiscal and monetary policies, we are going to be looking at a recovery that looks much more like the Great Depression or the 2008 recession, where it was a long, slow recovery. What concerns do you have right now if the only tools we use to respond in this moment is monetary policy?
Well, honestly, as you can imagine, I'm very focused on monetary policy, and I think that the thing that I assume you're hearing from your constituents at home is about inflation, and that is our assignment. You know, it's not that we control all of it.
Well, I guess, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are. But when I talked to the CFO of a manufacturing company a month ago, and he said, my business school teacher taught me to do just-in-time inventory, and now I'm trying to manage to just-in-case inventory. That requires capital. We talk to chip manufacturers who are saying, I need money to build, but I need a labor force to grow there, and I don't know how to do that unless I have access to capital. Raising rates is great at curtailing demand. It's also great at curtailing supply. So what concerns do you have if all we do is raise rates?
Well, you're right. There would be supply effects as well. For example, to look at housing, you know, if housing starts will slow down, and I get that. But ultimately, we have a job to do, which is to restore price stability so that the economy can function well. It's really the bedrock of the economy, and it's most important for the people at the lower end of the spectrum who are now seeing their wages and savings eaten up by inflation. So we need to do that. There's lots of other things that need to be done in the economy, and that aren't the business of the Fed. But we have that job, and that really is our focus, along with, of course, preserving a strong labor market. The two mandates are equal. In the current situation, the labor market is very strong. It's extremely strong. Two vacancies for every unemployed person, 3.6% unemployment, and wages moving up. So it really is a question of getting inflation under control, and that has to be our focus.
Well, I guess I would just ask you to use your voice as eloquently as you have over the last 2 years. I'm not asking you to tell us how to do our job, but the supply pieces matter. And when the market is baking in a recession, I can justify that logic if the only tool we use are the tools under your purview. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.